Excellent. So we're a little short for time, and I appreciate you all for joining for the abbreviated version. This is the twinkle twinkle version of Parsha Shelach, but we have a jam-packed Parsha. So let's dive right in. I shared the screen. You can see the screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. And let's begin. So Parsha Shelach is the beginning of the middle of things fall apart for Parshat, for the book of Bamidbar, as we just outlined before, and really like you can feel the ebb and flow of the Parshiot. There's this pace going to reach the land of Israel. Until last week's Parsha, we had no reason to suspect we weren't going to make it. And then we had a little bit of complaints, a little bit of sidetrack, not a lot of paying attention to the outcome of that. And then we move forward, and Shelach is where things really fall apart. We have the spies get sent. We have they go for 40 days. They get certain report. In the past, we've talked a little about who sent them, why were they sent. There's a little bit of a discrepancy between the description we have in our Parsha and description we have in Devarim. But as we know, unfortunately, they come back. They do report about the greatness of the land of Israel, but they also talk about some of the pitfalls that might exist and the challenges. And color tries to be positive, but national hysteria ensues. And there's a call to return to Egypt. Yoshua and Caleb try to get people back. They tear their clothes. The people want to perhaps kill them. And God gets very angry with the people. And really, it becomes a watershed moment where we get both forgiveness, but wandering 40 years in the desert. We get the death of the spies. Moshe pleads for mercy, and we get the Yud Gimel Midot. We get the 13 attributes of mercy that we continue to use to this day. And then we have another of potpourri of incidents that carry the rest of the parsha. We have the Mapilim. The Mapilim in the biblical narrative are people who defy God's wishes and try to enter the land of Israel nonetheless, and they ended up getting wiped out. In modern context, Mapilim are those who tried to defy the British, who didn't want Jews to return to the land of Israel, and they become heroes. It's almost like a rechristening of the name and making it a holy vehicle. We have the laws of Nisachim, of Chala, which seems somewhat out of place, but again, if you think about the broader context, those are mitzvot that are very much connected to the land of Israel. And in some ways, it's a comfort for the people because, at this point, they think we're never going to make it. We just added 40 more years to our sentence. Maybe we'll never make it. And, both of these mitzvot are predicated on being in the land of Israel, and therefore perhaps brought some very needed comfort that they'll make it to the land of Israel. We have the sacrifices for the communal, for individual. We have the story of the Mekoshesh Eitzim, the wood gatherer, and we have Tzitzit, the famous last paragraph of Shema that we get at the end of the Parsha. There's really so much to talk about, but I want to just focus on one episode, the beginning, ask a question, and try for us to find a little bit in the short time we have together. So if you look in part number 2 over here, we have the beginning of the Parsha where Moshe sends the spies. And what's interesting and who anticipates or who initiates this process, at least according to our text, I don't mean our text, the narrative here, it's God, right? Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. God commands Moshe to say, Shlach Nashim, send people. V'yatzurat er Canaan, and they should tour out the land of Israel. Asher ani noten livnei Israel, that I'm giving to the land, to the people. Ish echad, one person per tribe. Kol nasi behem, they should all be leaders. So then Moshe sends them. And at the very end of this section, we get Elu Shemot HaNashim. These are all the names. We get all the names. For the person for Ruvain was Shamua ben Zachor. When you have for this one and that one, obviously famously for Yehuda, we have Caleb ben Yefuneh. And then what happens? Vaikra Moshe Hoshea Benun Yoshua. Moshe changes Yoshua's name. So why does Moshe change Yoshua's name? Anyone? Cindy, what was that?
I said, not a clue.
Nothing?
But the new name was used in the Torah before this point, right?
Right. So there's a question about when this name was changed, but we do know it's changed. So it gets changed.
So
why?
I believe that Midrash says that Moses wanted to have parts of God's name in Yehoshua's name.
Right. So what is that Midrash trying to tell us? What's Moshe trying to accomplish?
To try to give him like additional protection or
exactly. That's exactly the point. That Moshe is tells Yoshua that he gets this extra name, that we add part of God's name to Yoshua's name, and that's a special prayer, right? Hitpalo alav. Moshe davened. Rashi quotes this, but Moshe davened, Yah, God's name, Yoshiacha mi'atzat meraglim, that God should protect you from the advice, the counsel, what will happen with the meraglim. So the question I'd like to explore for a couple moments is why. Meaning, let's play this out. Moshe's worried something's going to happen, so he davens for Yoshua. If Moshe is worried something's going to happen, why isn't he daven for all of them? Right? Why doesn't he? And what about Kalev? Kalev is a good actor. Is one of our protagonists in this story, right? If anything, he's a little bit even more vocal than Yoshua. How come no one davened for Kalev? Right? There are many ways to ask this question. Why does Moshe change his name to protect Yoshua? So why didn't Moshe daven to protect everyone? Why didn't Moshe? Why did Kalev not get that? And so much of the Midrash points out that Kalev breaks off from this is based on the Gemara. That Kalev breaks off from the people, and he goes to Hebron, and he has this amazing encounter where he davens at Marat HaMachpelah for inspiration. And so Kalev kind of built his own inspiration. So the question then is, why is that necessary? Why didn't Moshe provide the inspiration for him? Why only Yoshua? Interesting question, no?
yes,
Very.
Right?
Yeah.
So there are a couple of answers that are given. I want to share with you two of them. And there are many more. The first I just want to point out is this idea of changing names. The Abarbanel and the Or Chaim point out that, and we've talked about this, which is why I want to bring it up here, is that names, particularly for names of people who aren't primary figures in Tanakh, are often used as demonstrative of their behavior, right? And so, like we talked about Orpah, we talked about Ploni Almoni, we talked about some of these other names, right? So let's look at some of these names. If you look at them, either they have like devious names almost. If you look at Lemate Asher, Situr, right? Like Satum, like closed up, right? Or you have Zvulun Gadi Ben Sodi, the secret one, the hit, like a sod. And the other name that you see come up a lot are animal names, right? These people have certain animalistic characteristics. So you have, for example, Limate Dan, the leader for Dan, Amiel Ben Gmali, right? Gamal, camel. Gadi Ben Susi, right? Sus, horse. So the commentators are pointed out, and there are those who can bring into each name some type of deflection of the name in a way that is challenged. And so we see already how Moshe is picking up on some type of challenge in the names, And therefore, the way Moshe is praying for Yoshua is by changing his name, right? Which only strengthens our question. If Moshe is realizing that there's something off about the names here, so he needs to change Yoshua's name, so why doesn't he change everyone's name, right?
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
So
Or just,
I'm going to give you two answers in the short time we have.
Caleb is also animal.
Exactly. Oh, thank you. Of course, Kalev, right?
No.
Kalev.
bark,
Right.
bark. Woof, woof.
Yes.
So Chori, all of these have have these type of weird meanings. So what's going on here? So the Maharal, the famous Maharal, most famous for a golem he never made, suggests that it wasn't that Moshe didn't daven for everyone. Moshe davened for everyone, but Moshe added an extra prayer for Yoshua. And there are really 2-3 ways of looking at why that is. The Maharal suggests that Yoshua has special status, that Yoshua was Moshe's prize student. And if Yoshua did something wrong, not that Moshe anticipated what would happen, but if Yoshua himself came out the weakest of this group, then that would reflect poorly on Moshe. And that Moshe had an extra strength. When we daven for people, right, part of why we say people's names by the Mishaberach, part of why it's helpful to know the person when you daven for them, is that when you have a connection to them, it's easier to daven for them. You feel more connected. And Moshe obviously was connected to everyone, but he was most connected to Yoshua. So once he was davening for everyone, he was able to throw in a little extra for Yoshua. The Meshech Chachma takes this understanding in a separate direction, that Yoshua was already a war hero, as Lee alluded to. In Shemot, Yoshua leads the people against the tribe of Amalek, and by doing that, Yoshua established himself. And if Yoshua falls prey in this process, it will terrify the people. And so Yoshua, for the shock value for the people, needed that extra protection, and therefore gets the extra tefillah. There's a different model suggested, and this I will conclude, suggested by the Or Chaim, but I think most clearly written by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the latest Lubavitcher Rebbe, the last Lubavitcher Rebbe, in a couple of places. And what he suggests is you see two very different models of the type of people that you have. You have Yoshua, who is epitomized by his relationship to Moshe, that close connection to Moshe, that there's this top-down type of strength that he draws, and therefore Moshe is able to daven for him, and that will affect Yoshua. Kalev, on the other hand, draws his strength from a much more bottom-up type of approach. And in that, even if Moshe were to daven for him, it wouldn't help. Meaning there's certain people you have to know yourself. You have to know what will strengthen you, what will give you strength, what will bring you inspiration. And so Kalev fashions himself as a much more strong internal strength. And therefore, we read that he needed to seek out on his own that inspiration. And that's why the Midrash perhaps goes out of its way to tell us about Kalev's itinerary when he was in the land of Israel, noting that there are different types of people. There are people who are like Yoshua, there are people like Kalev, and there are different things that will resonate with them differently. I think it's a fascinating way of thinking about the spies, because we think so often at groups of people as very much the same. Why didn't Moshe daven for this way, daven for that one? And maybe the answer is that Moshe understood that different personalities, different things work, and different things connect, and different things bring that, can be sources of that inner or external strength. And so it was more appropriate to give Kalev the latitude to go develop that on his own than Moshe sitting down and giving him a bracha. So it's two different approaches. I would say a third approach might be more in line with Yoshua's character, but we're not able to do that at this time. So we looked at our Parsha. We asked a very important question on the first Rashi, which seems to be what we did last week also. One of the famous Rashis in our Parsha, Yoshua gets davened for, his name gets changed by Moshe. Why only Yoshua? Where's everyone else? And we gave two possible answers. One is by the Maharal, that everyone was davened for, but Yoshua has special tefillah, either because he was connected to Moshe, or he had that special status as a war hero, or quoting the Or Chaim or the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that Moshe understood that there are different types of people with different types of strengths, and therefore a bracha and a change of name wouldn't have affected Kalev like it would have affected Yoshua, and a visit to Hebron to find that internal inspiration would not have helped Yoshua as much as it carried Kalev through the day. All right, I appreciate you joining me for a short 15 minutes.
Thank you very much.
For the-
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.